30 seconds. 20 seconds. 15 seconds. 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
In your face, all over the place. We're online 24/7. 24/7. You're listening to the hottest internet station.
From beautiful Saline in southeastern Michigan.
Around the world at sunskyMysteries.com.
This is the 2009 Top 10 Webcam in the World winner. This is SETV.
Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to a fine Friday evening. I hope everybody has had an excellent week. We have done a couple of shows. We experimented with our audio-only format. That was a miserable failure on Wednesday night. We also have a Saturday night show scheduled with our science producer, Boris Artemenko, and a special guest that we will be announcing at the beginning of the show. Tonight we have the return of a gentleman that we had on last week. His name is Bob Schroeder, and he has written a book detailing how UFOs actually work, how he believes that they actually work. And tonight what we're going to do is we're going to go into how these things operate and talk about the different shapes, the different types, how they look, how they look when they're operating, and how he believes that he can actually do some investigative work with the proper equipment. So I'm going to bring in our guest, Bob Schroeder. Bob, how are you doing tonight?
Fantastic, Bill. And how are you doing there?
We are doing excellent. The weather, believe it or not, is actually pretty nice up here in Michigan.
Yeah, same thing down here. We're almost 60 degrees here in the middle of January, and I'm not complaining.
Me either. We've had, I think we've had probably 4 inches of snow all winter. It's been essentially raining all winter. So we'll take that any year, because I'm sure next year we're going to go right back to the miserable slogging through the slush.
I think you're right. I think we better enjoy this year while we can.
Yeah, besides, it is 2012, so we have that to look forward to.
Yeah. So.
All right, so we have a slideshow that you sent us today that details some of the information that we're going to talk about. Now, UFOs, over the years, they have been seen in a myriad different types of shapes. But first of all, before I forget, we need to plug your book. What is the name of your book?
The title of the book, Bill,
yes,
is Solving the UFO Enigma. That's the main title. And then the subtitle is How Modern Physics is Revealing the Technology of UFOs. And can I mention a little bit about myself, my background?
Sure. Go right on ahead. This is going to be up on the YouTube channel, so everybody can get the information that they need in order to be able to order the book. Because people want to know, well, what's this guy all about? Is he just some fly-by-night kind of a guy? But Bob actually has some excellent credentials. Bob, take it away.
Okay. By the way, the book is available on Amazon and on Kindle. And just a little bit about my background. I come from a family of scientists and engineers. I have degrees in mathematics from Rutgers University, and a degree in aerospace engineering, and an MBA as well. All my life I've loved science. Because I come from a family of scientists and engineers. My dad was a research chemist, and he was a graduate of MIT. Our daughter graduated from Penn State, and she's one of the very few female structural engineers, and which is kind of interesting. And my wife is a math teacher, high school math. She teaches calculus and things like that. And then I have many cousins and nephews and nieces that are in various technical fields, engineers, mechanical engineers, and things like that. So it's kind of the background that I come from. I don't mean to say this to, boast or anything like that. It's just that's my background, and my interest in the UFO topic is partly related to that background, because way back, as I mentioned last week, in 1957, I was only like 12 years old. I actually saw a UFO in Teaneck, New Jersey, where I grew up, and it so impressed me that for years since then, I've been wondering how these things worked, and I kept looking at all different types of theories out there, and I came to realize that none of them really quite made sense because of the. In fact, I'll explain that real quick. There's a lot of theories out there that talk about how the UFOs get to planet Earth, and most of them talk about either things like they go at pretty close to the speed of light from one star system to another, but even close to the speed of light, the nearest star system would still take probably 5 or 6 years to get here, and that doesn't seem to tie with the behavior of these UFOs, because very often they behave in a very frivolous manner. They often report that these UFOs, when they come over, that they'll play with cars and planes, and they look almost like they're almost having fun, and just kind of showing off their capability compared to what we can do. But anyway, so over the years, I kept reading more and more about UFOs, and at the same time, of course, I was studying. I worked for a computer company, but on the side, I did everything I could to learn everything that was happening in the world of physics. And anyway, I finally, when I retired a couple years ago, I decided I'm going to write a book. I'd come to the conclusion that where modern physics is moving right now, and where the way it's developing is pointing directly at a very likely solution to the UFO phenomenon, and that's what the book is about. And in the slideshow tonight, it's a summary. Last week we did a much bigger slideshow that kind of got further into the physics.
Right.
But this one, this one will just be 10 slides, and however it will summarize it, and I think most people will find this quite interesting. And so I guess we could go ahead and start, Bill.
Yeah, we have slide number 1 up there, and it is the summary of solving the UFO enigma concept. And I'm going to go ahead and read it for the audience, because we do have, believe it or not, a substantial number of listeners on the audio feed. After studying the UFO data for decades, I realized these craft had strong, attractive gravitational fields around them, not repulsive. That's an important clue to their technology.
And what I meant by that is I've been studying the UFO. I've been looking at these UFO reports for years, and I began to notice a couple of very strange ones, one of which we talked about last week, and that one of them was in Wanacue Reservoir in northern New Jersey, in 1966. And in that particular sighting, a UFO was seen by a police officer hovering over the reservoir. But the puzzling thing about it, and it puzzled me way back in the 60s when I first heard about it, it absolutely baffled me. I couldn't figure out what was going on. But according to the police officer, the water was being, a huge swath of water underneath this UFO, several hundred feet long and probably 50 feet wide, was being lifted up. It was mounding up under the UFO, which is hovering maybe 20 feet or so above the water.
Mm-hmm.
And when I read that, I thought it just didn't make sense. If it's because from like many other people who've looked at the UFO phenomenon, I just always assumed it was anti-gravity. But after I read that report, it didn't make any sense because this was clearly attractive gravity. It was pulling the water up toward the bottom. And so that's what this slideshow is about. You'll see how I finally figured out, I believe, what they are, the technology that they are using. And I guess if we can go to slide 2, Bill?
Yep. Now, I just had a thought while you were talking there about the water mounding up, because I read the book last week, and I read that particular report.
Uh-huh.
And if the water's mounding up underneath it, that means it has to have a very high gravitational force associated with the actual craft itself, doesn't it?
Exactly. A tremendously strong, attractive gravitational force, which, doesn't make sense because you would think, if anything, it would just be neutral underneath it. That is, if it was anti-gravity, then it would just cancel out the effect of gravity, so that everything under it would just be pretty much the same as it is. And occasionally we should probably see the water pushed down in a trough. But that's not what they saw. And by the way, this was not the only report of this type. There were many others that also showed this type of behavior on the part of UFOs. And in fact, there was one, many people who are listening to the show are probably familiar with The Examiner with Roger Marsh. It's an online UFO reporting site. And I saw something in there just maybe a week or two ago where a UFO was seen up in the sky just hovering. And as a big cloud drifted close to the UFO, the cloud suddenly just was seemingly sucked into the UFO. It just was kind of like a vacuum cleaner. It just went into the UFO.
Wow.
Yeah, and when I read that, I knew that exactly matched what I'm talking about. And in other cases, like we did talk about last week, light beams, like from searchlights, have been seen to bend not away from a UFO, which would be anti-gravity, but actually bend toward the UFO. And exactly as Bill just mentioned there, in order for a light beam to be bent toward a UFO, the gravitational attraction, the gravitational force, attractive force around the UFO, that field has to be of immense power. And we'll see how they do it as we get further into the slideshow here.
Okay, we have slide 2 up there. And slide 2, for those of you on the audio feed, says, in the last 2 decades, modern physics is pointing toward the existence of a 4-dimensional space-time membranes floating in a larger space-time of 5 dimensions. And that is a concept that I think most people, the average layperson, would have a hard time getting their consciousness or their brains wrapped around it. So I'm going to let you go ahead and explain what this particular slide is talking about.
Okay, thank you, Bill. What's happening in modern physics is up until about the 1970s, the physics community made the fundamental assumption that space-time was four-dimensional, 3 of space and 1 of time. But starting around the 1970s, the idea that there might be more than 4 dimensions became of interest to physicists because they were trying to solve a problem called the unified field theory. They were trying to unite the 4 fundamental forces of nature, which are electromagnetism, the weak nuclear force, the strong nuclear force, and gravity. And they had had some success with the 3 non-gravity forces, but in trying to unite gravity with the other 3 forces, they had reached literally a dead end. They couldn't make any progress until, as I mentioned, around the late 1970s, they began toying with the idea that there might be more than 4 dimensions. And what happened then in the next 2 or 3 decades after that, and right up till today, was literally a flurry of activity in the physics community as they explored the idea of additional dimensions. And some of the theories that they came up with actually required additional dimensions, so they kind of knew that at that point they might be on the right track, especially because one of these theories, called M theory, actually predicted the existence of a quantum particle called the graviton. And although last week I spent more time discussing the detail here, in a nutshell, what that really means is that the other 3 non-gravity forces of nature are quantum theories. There's 2 pillars of modern physics: quantum mechanics and general relativity. Quantum mechanics covers the 3 non-gravity forces, and they can be explained in quantum theory. General relativity, on the other hand, explains gravity. And so, but they did not have, they might have now, but they did not have up until the late 70s a theory of quantum gravity, where gravity could be explained in terms of tiny little quantum particles called gravitons. And so when M theory came up, when M theory actually predicted the existence of a spin 2 quantum particle called the graviton, physicists began to really get excited because they figured they were now closing in on the theory of everything. It's actually called the TOE, theory of everything.
Wow.
And so that's where we are today, and we'll see how this fits in to the UFO phenomenon as these slides continue here.
So it's called the theory of everything.
Yes, and this is literally the holy grail of modern physics. In fact, so much so that Stephen Hawking, the famous English physicist, said that a few years ago, said M theory may represent, as he put it, the end of physics as we know it. In other words, they figured it all out. So
wow.
So that's what's going on. And I'll let you take over, Bill.
Okay. With that, I'm going to go to slide 3 because that's.
Well, you may want to continue reading slide 2 there, because that's important here. Well, actually, yeah, it is important. Where you had read the first sentence there.
Right. It is.
You may want to pick up where it says, "It is believed."
It is believed that our universe is one of these 4-dimensional space-time membranes. So that sort of means that the physicists believe there are other universes?
Yes, that's correct.
That sentence would lead me to believe that it's kind of hard to get your brain around, folks, but it kind of leads me to believe that the physicists think that there are multiple universes and parallel universes
to each other.
Okay, sort of like what you would see in Star Trek with some of the Star Trek episodes where there were parallel universes where things were almost the same but not quite the same.
Yes, and in fact, admittedly, those kind of stories back then were science fiction, but now physics is definitely pointing toward the existence of parallel worlds to ours.
Wow.
Yeah.
The next sentence reads, let me see here, at least one other 4D space-time membrane is thought to exist parallel to our membrane, which would be like right next to it, right?
Exactly. In fact, surprisingly, the membrane or membranes that may be next to us are literally closer than the distance between your thumb and forefinger when you press them together.
Didn't Einstein say? I've read a series of books. It was, and I forget the. I think it was wasn't that book. That was a different book. It was about a modern. This might appeal to you too, Bob. It was about a modern aircraft carrier task force that was on its way over to the Middle East because there was some big uprising there, and they had along with them a group of scientists who were experimenting with black holes. And the scientists actually succeeded in creating a black hole, and this aircraft carrier group went back in time to just before World War II. And
I remember this thing. Is that the one, it was just before the attack on Pearl Harbor?
Yeah. In fact, the author wrote a whole series of books, and I think the next one is coming out in sometime this coming spring. But in the book, they actually he actually described Einstein and the president and everybody else. And Einstein is quoted in that book as saying that because the captain, or actually the admiral of the 21st Century Carrier Group, he was kind of melancholy because he had left his wife and his kids and his grandkids back in the other time period. And Einstein said, no, the parallel universe that you came from is closer than your shirt is to your skin.
Exactly. Yes. It's because, and you'll see why that's the case here shortly. I think, by the way, Bill, that the name of the movie with Kirk Douglas as the Admiral was Countdown to Zero.
Yeah, it was. There was a movie, but this is an entirely new series of books.
Okay.
Yeah, he started writing these books, I think, sometime in 2009.
Okay, this movie I'm referring to was before that. Yeah,
yes, I remember seeing. In fact, one of the actors in that movie just died earlier this week. Yeah. Yeah, James Ferrantino. That was the guy's name.
Huh.
Yeah. Okay. Well, back to the slideshow. Now that we've talked about Einstein and his theory of alternate universes, the space between these membranes is referred to as the bulk.
Yeah, keep that term in mind, the bulk. That's very important.
The collection of theories that uses these ideas is referred to as M-theory.
Yeah, exactly. And there's actually a total of half a dozen theories. There's 6 theories altogether. And they believe that, but it turns out they were puzzled why there are 6 separate theories. But it turns out they did more work on it, and they discovered that these theories are dual to each other. That is, they are interchangeable, and so now they think that they're zeroing in on a theory of everything. They're not quite there, but they're definitely getting close. I think.
Wow.
And so I guess we can go to slide 3.
Slide 3, and this one reads, for those of you on the audio stream, I'm going to read the whole thing. One of the theories derived from M-theory is called warped geometry, developed by a Harvard physicist and another physicist from Johns Hopkins University. Warped geometry solves one of the biggest problems in physics, called the hierarchy problem. There are different aspects to the hierarchy problem, but the one of interest to those of us studying the UFO phenomenon is the puzzle of why gravity force is exponentially weaker than the other forces of nature: electromagnetism, strong nuclear force, and weak nuclear force. Before you get into that slide, are there other physicists that are doing UFO work?
There are. I make sure I can remember their names. Stanton Friedman,
I know
he's a
him.
nuclear physicist, and I'm sure you know him. Also, Bruce Maccabee, he's an optical physicist. Gee, that's somebody I probably should contact because he might be able to help on the spectrographic stuff, which we'll see at the end of the slideshow here.
Okay.
And those two for sure. There's another physicist, what's his name? I can't think of his name. He's out at Stanford University. He's written a couple of books on the UFO phenomenon, and he's really very well respected. He's got a lot of accomplishments in physics. If I think of his name, I'll mention it later. And I'm having a brain freeze here.
That's okay.
Yeah, but there are definitely people in the physics community that have been investigating the UFO phenomenon. In the past, James McDonald from the University of Arizona, now he's since passed away, but he investigated UFOs with a lot of, he put in a huge effort back in the 60s and 70s. And then another one is Dr. James Harder, Harder, and I'm not sure what university he's associated with, but he also was investigating the UFO phenomenon, and I'm sure there's probably many others that I'm just not aware of or I can't remember, but there's definitely physicists who are involved in it. However, unfortunately, I have to say that most of the mainstream physics community today, which you might call the establishment physics community, looks upon the UFO phenomenon or getting involved with it as touching the third rail, and you know they're just not going to go near it. But as we get further into the slideshow, I'm going to talk about some data that if those of us who are interested in the UFO phenomenon, if we can gather this kind of data, I am absolutely certain we can get the establishment physics community interested, because the kind of data that I think we can get, it's spectrographic data, both the visible and invisible spectrum. If we can get this data, and it will, I think, it will definitely attract the attention of establishment physics, but we'll get to that shortly.
Okay, very good. What else about this third slide? Should we talk about the hierarchy problem? What is that?
Okay, the hierarchy problem is how come, well, there's a couple of aspects to it, but as mentioned in the slide, what's important as far as the UFO phenomenon is concerned is gravity is incredibly weak compared to the other forces of nature. Just to give you an idea, the electromagnetic force is 10 to the 36 power stronger than the gravity force. So to give people an idea of how much stronger electromagnetism is than gravity, that's 1 followed by 36 zeros, 10 to the 36 power, which means it's not 10 times stronger, which is 10 to the first power, not 100 times stronger, which is 10 squared, not 1,000, which is 10 cubed. It's like a gazillion, trillion, billion, zillion, willion, or whatever. I don't even know if they have a name for it. And that's how much stronger electromagnetism is than gravity. And the same is true of the strong nuclear force and the weak nuclear force, the other 3 non-gravity forces. So the big puzzle in modern physics, or one of the big puzzles, is why is gravity so weak compared to the other forces of nature. And this, by the way, bears directly on to the problem of trying to unify the four forces of nature, including gravity. The very weakness of gravity is what makes it so difficult to incorporate gravity into a theory of everything. But we may have a solution, which we'll see here in the next few slides.
Now, I have another question for you.
Okay.
These are real good slides because they're bringing up a lot of good questions.
Excellent.
I don't know if they're good questions, but they are questions.
No, any question's a good question.
Now, since the force of gravity is so much weaker than the other three forces, the electromagnetism, strong and weak nuclear forces, it seems to me that since gravity is what's holding us to the planet, it would be that much easier to counteract the effects of gravity.
You're exactly right, Bill. You are definitely right. In fact, you've hit on a very, very good point. If gravity was a whole lot stronger, developing a machine that could counteract it would be much, much more difficult. That's actually a very, very good point. And as further into the slideshow, we'll see how I believe these UFOs are countering the effects of gravity, and it may not be as difficult as people think. Yeah.
Oh, and now I'm starting to get excited. I'm going to go to slide 4.
Excellent. Okay. Yeah.
Here comes slide 4.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll read this for the folks that are on the audio stream and those that are going to be listening to the MP3 version of this later. Warped geometry solves the weakness of gravity problem by postulating that the second space-time membrane, called the gravity brane, is what is believed to exist parallel to the space-time membrane we live on, called the weak brane, is warped in such a way that it attracts the overwhelming majority of gravitons in the larger 5D universe to its surface. How can we, I'm going to say, dumb that down for the average layperson to understand?
Actually, Bill, it's not that hard. If you think of two parallel membranes, okay. Now, of course, we live on a 4-dimensional membrane.
Yep.
And I can't. It's impossible for us to visualize a 4-dimensional membrane. But what we can do is we can make an analogy. If you imagine the space-time that we live on, which is called the weak membrane, they call it weak brane for short, B-R-A-N-E. If you imagine it as just being a 2-dimensional piece of paper, 8.5 by 11, and then you imagine a second membrane, space-time membrane, also a 2-dimensional piece of paper, make it 8.5 by 11 too. And you think of them side by side. That is what Dr. Randall, that's the lady's name who came up with this theory, Dr. Lisa Randall. So that's exactly what these two parallel membranes would look like in a simplified lower dimensional example.
Okay.
And what's happening is what they believe, what the physicists who worked on this theory believe, is they believe that all the forces are represented by what they call force carriers. So, for example, the electromagnetic force, the quantum particle that carries the electromagnetic force is called the photon, and everybody's heard of the photon.
Right.
And the weak nuclear force is carried by 3 particles, the W plus, the W minus, and the Z neutral particle. And the strong nuclear force is carried by particles, force particles they call them, that are called gluons, G-L-U-O-N-S.
Okay.
And it comes, and physicists the strong nuclear force, which is carried by the gluons. The reason they use the term glue is because, as everybody knows, like charges repel each other. So how do protons, which have like charge, all stay together in the nucleus? Well, the electromagnetic force that causes protons to want to fly apart is counteracted even more by the strong nuclear force, which is carried by particles called gluons.
Okay.
And so, now I forgot where I was going on this. And, but anyway.
Well, we're gluing protons together at this point.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I was trying to explain the membranes.
Okay.
So, and then likewise, Dr. Randall's theory, which is called the warp geometry, postulates that the particle that carries the gravity force, which we call the graviton, although it hasn't been discovered yet, but most physicists believe it exists. According to her theory, that second membrane that's out there floating in a larger 5-dimensional space-time, so you have two 4-dimensional membranes side by side in a larger 5-dimensional space, and you can and we can make the analogy to the 2-dimensional pieces of paper.
Mm-hmm.
We can say that since we live in a 3-dimensional space world, you can see those two pieces of paper in side by side in the 3-dimensional world. So the 3 dimensions is analogous to the 5 dimensions,
okay.
and the 2 dimensions is analogous to the 4 dimensions. But of course I can't show a 5-dimensional world. Our brains are designed for 3 dimensions.
But the three dimensions for the audience is the width, the height, and the breadth of the piece of paper, the thickness. And as you look at it as a photographer, when I look at the pieces of paper, I see, the length of the piece of paper as it extends away from you. Yeah,
and Bill, if I could point out about the gravitons,
mm-hmm.
according to Dr. Randall's theory, 99.9999999 whatever % of all the gravitons in the larger 5-dimensional universe are squingeled up real close to the other membrane, which is called the gravity membrane, or gravity brain for short.
Right.
And so that would explain why gravity is so weak on our membrane, which is called the weak membrane for exactly that reason. It's actually called the weak membrane because it's the strength of the weak nuclear force kind of sets the scale on our membrane.
So let me see if I can, if I'm understanding this, is that you've got two pieces of paper. One is the one that we live on, that's called the weak brain, and the other one is called the gravity brain. And the gravity itself, if you think of gravity as little grains of sand, most of them are up against the other membrane instead of the one that we're on.
Exactly. And because of that, the number of grains of sand, if you think of them as gravitons,
mm-hmm.
on our membrane, in the weak membrane where we live, our visible universe here, is very, very few. There's not many of them. And when you don't have many force carriers of a given force, then that force cannot be strong in that part of the larger 5-dimensional universe.
Wow.
And that is why it appears that gravity is so weak on our membrane, our universe.
Yeah.
And that's very interesting. And when I first read this theory, Bill, I knew right away that this had something to do with the UFO phenomenon, and then I quickly realized how it fit in. And we've actually hit everything on slide 4, so we could go to slide 5.
Okay, let's go to slide 5. Slide 5 is one that I'm sure every high school, anybody that's been in high school physics knows about. This one talks about general relativity. And it says, general relativity tells us that distances shrink and time dilates in a strong gravity field. And this is Bob talking now. I believe these UFOs are penetrating the bulk and going deep enough into the bulk where the distances between stars shrink to very small distances relative to our weak brain. That's the sheet of paper that we're on. I explain how time dilation is accounted for as well in the book, and we'll repeat the title of the book here in just a minute. Anyway, the ability to penetrate the bulk solves one of the biggest pieces of the UFO puzzle, which is how they get here. Other aspects of the UFO puzzle are also explained in the book. And let's get the name of the book out again. It is available on Amazon.com, and the author's name is Robert Schroeder. And Schroeder is spelled just like you would expect it to be. And it's called The UFO Enigma. Is that what it is? Or Solving the UFO Enigma?
Bill,
yes.
It's titled Solving the UFO Enigma. That's the main title. And then the subtitle is How Modern Physics is Revealing the Technology of UFOs. And my name, by the way, is spelled Schroeder, because there's actually a couple different spellings of that. That's a fairly common name.
Okay. All right. That's and this is a special news alert, folks. There has been a 3.3 magnitude earthquake in Baja, Mexico. And they are having some, looks like electrical and internet difficulties down there. One of my producers is in Baja, Mexico. And it's a very, very active area for earthquakes these days. And they just had a 3.3 magnitude earthquake down there.
Could I mention one more thing about slide 5?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Bill, where it says the distances between stars shrink to very small distances relative to our weak brain. So in other words, if a UFO, which I believe they can, is able to penetrate that bulk, that area between the membranes, so that's actually the fifth dimension there, if they can get in there, which I think they can, then general relativity takes over, and it shrinks distances to tiny little distances. So Alpha Centauri is the closest star system to us. It actually consists of 3 stars, Alpha Centauri A, B, and Proxima. And so it's actually got 3 stars. The distance to that star is 25 trillion miles, which is 25 to 10 to the 9th power. However, or 10 to the 12th, sorry. However, if you go into the bulk, into that space between the membranes, only part way, I count in the book in the first slideshow that we did last week. I calculated the distance to be only 25 miles to Alpha Centauri if you get deep enough into the bulk.
Wow!
And so that gives some idea of the potential, the possible method for us to get to another star. And I'm in fact, I would say with almost 100% certainty that that's what these UFOs are doing, and how they get in there. I talk about in the book, but I also kind of touch on it in the next 2 slides, 2 or 3 slides.
So if we have our 2 sheets of paper, and the grains of sand are the gravity, and most of them are up against the other sheet of paper, and we're on the sheet of paper that has the least number of little grains of sand. And what the people that fly these UFOs do is they sort of, if you picture like taking a pencil and pushing up against that piece of paper that we're on, so that the tip of that pencil just starts to come through that piece of paper, and the space between the 2 pieces of paper is called the bulk, and they're essentially going into that little into that, like sort of like just poking a little bit into there.
Exactly. Yes,
Huh,
into that
interesting.
space. And by the way, you might people might wonder. Remember at the beginning, I explained that those two pieces of paper are literally right side by side. That is, the distance between your thumb and your forefinger, if you hold them together, is that distance. And you might say, well, wait a minute, how could a big UFO the size of 100 feet across or something, how could that possibly fit in that obviously very tiny space? The answer is absolutely simple. It's general relativity. Incredibly, the force of gravity increases by 10 to the 16th power inside the bulk. So in other words, that's 1 followed by 16 zeros. So something that's 100 feet across, when it gets into the bulk, literally shrinks down to microscopic size. You can't even see it.
Wow.
And however, the physics inside of the UFO does not change. The people inside it wouldn't have any conception that they are being shrunk. I don't actually think they are shrunk all the way down. I think what ends up happening is they maintain the size of their craft in the bulk, and to a certain degree, and then once they're in there, they move from one star system to another, taking advantage of the much shorter distance in the bulk. Now, of course, one of the factors that many people in the audience may have noticed is that the way general relativity works, when gravity is very, very strong, time slows down.
Right.
So even though the distance between the stars is very small, unfortunately, the time it would take to cover even that 25 miles to Alpha Centauri that I talked about there would be billions of years. Except I talk about that in the book, and I explain how they basically, because if you think of space-time as made up of a fabric of gravitons, the way these UFOs work is they divert those gravitons deeper into the bulk, and which we'll talk about here in a second, and I'll explain how they do it. And by eliminating those gravitons at any particular location where they are, that allows them to travel in the direction in which they're eliminating the gravitons. This will be all a lot clearer as we go on to slide 6.
And which we are going to do right now. Slide 6.
Yes, thank you, Bill.
This is kind of a long one. I'm going to go ahead and read, I guess, the first part of this. The strong gravity field around the UFOs is created by Kaluza-Klein gravitons that are predicted by M-theory. These KK gravitons, in turn, create micro black holes, which at their singularities, where general relativity and quantum mechanics theories break down, kick the gravitons into the bulk, or deeper into the bulk if the UFO is already in the bulk. So what does that was what you were just talking about a second ago, isn't it?
Exactly. Yep, that's right. And I believe what they're doing, and we expect at the Large Hadron Collider particle accelerator in Geneva, Switzerland, where they're testing M theory, and they're testing warp geometry as well. We expect to be creating these mini micro black holes, and they are expected to have immense gravitational strength. Remember I had mentioned before 10 to the 16th power?
Right.
So that's how much stronger the gravitons that we humans will be creating at the Large Hadron Collider right over there in Geneva, Switzerland. We expect to create these KK gravitons, Kaluza-Klein gravitons, and it's named after a couple of physicists who predicted these things many, many years ago. And we expect to actually create these incredibly strong gravitational fields around these micro black holes. And I believe what these UFOs are doing, in fact, the reason why, if you've ever looked at these UFOs, they are almost always described as a disk, a sphere, a cylinder, or even if they're described as a triangle, they talk about 3 bright circles, one in each corner. But the reason there's a circular aspect to all of these UFOs is because these machines, are particle accelerators. And they are smashing subatomic particles together to create these micro black holes, which in turn swallow 4-dimensional 4D gravitons from planet Earth. And that's why these UFOs are largely unaffected by the gravity force of planet Earth. They probably allow some gravity force to get through, but by and large, they eliminate most of it. Essentially what's happening, they surround their craft, and many people report like a bright halo around these UFOs. Well, what that is they're actually colliding the subatomic particles together on the outside of the craft, and that way, when a graviton from planet Earth goes up to tell the craft that it's supposed to weigh 50 tons and crash to the Earth, instead, what happens, that graviton hits that halo, which is filled with micro black holes, and it's diverted into the bulk. It goes into the bulk. It's a little more complex than that, which I'll explain in the next slide, but that gives the basic idea.
I've got 2 questions at this point.
Yes.
These mini black holes that they're going to be creating at the collider, and I know every single radio host that you're going to be talking to is going to be asking you this question. If they're creating these little micro black holes at the collider, and then they have that much gravity, number one, well, actually 3 questions. Number one, how long are these little black holes going to last? Number 2, why wouldn't they destroy the collider itself with all their gravity? And number 3, were they going to blow up the planet?
You got a point there, because I called up Geneva today and I didn't get an answer. I'm wondering if Geneva's gone. No, that's a joke. Just kidding. Just kidding.
You almost had me going there for just a minute, Bob.
Actually, no. The reason is because of something called Hawking radiation. These micro black holes disappear almost as quickly as they are formed, and even though they do their job of getting rid of Earth gravitons, they don't last very long. And so they in physics they call it particle decay. In this case, mini black hole decay. These black holes decay so quickly that they don't pose any problem. They can't grow any bigger. And as a matter of fact, many people may not even realize this, but cosmic rays coming from deep outer space and coming with tremendous speed and energy, when they hit our atmosphere, they can hit like a dust particle in the atmosphere of the Earth and actually create exactly the same micro black holes that are being created at the Large Hadron Collider, or that they haven't done it yet, but they hope to. And so they do pick up showers of what they call gamma rays from these events in the atmosphere, so they know that they're very likely occurring. So in other words, micro black holes are part of nature. They occur naturally, and we're just trying to create them with a machine of our own design. But randomly, they're occurring anyway up in the atmosphere from high energy cosmic rays. So it's not a real big deal. And the Earth has been here, 5 billion years or whatever?
Something like that.
And we're still here.
I heard another theory that the universe is destroyed and recreated like 1,000 times a second.
Oh, I don't know. I don't think so, because because we, at least in terms of our time scale, we know that our universe is about, I'm not sure, maybe 13 or 14 billion years old. So it's been around for a lot of seconds, and it's probably there are theories out there though that universes come from a singularity, which is at the center of a black hole, and they grow to immense size, just like ours, and then they eventually reverse their growth and they start to shrink, and then they end up as another singularity until they blow up again and create a brand new space-time. We could be in one of those cycles. In fact, for that matter, we could be in a black hole. I know this sounds very, very bizarre. In fact, when I first read it, I read it in Dr. Michio Kaku's book. He's a physicist down at, I think, New York University. He's been on TV many, many times. But he pointed out that the requirements for a black hole are determined by what's called the Schwarzschild radius, named after a German physicist by the name of Karl Schwarzschild, who was actually fighting on the Eastern Front in the German army back in 1918 or something like that. And now general relativity had come out in 1916, and of course it was in the German language because Einstein spoke German, and Schwarzschild, who incredibly was an artillery officer in the midst of all the chaos of the fighting in World War I, he worked out the first solution to general relativity, and his solution showed that black holes could occur, and he sent it to Einstein, and Einstein confirmed. He checked it out and said it was exactly correct.
Wow.
So that was the first real solution to the general relativity, and so what they call the Einstein field equations, the EFE, and but anyway, what is now called the Schwarzschild radius, it turns out that you need a certain density with a given radius in order to have a black hole. Now, strangely enough, the density of the known universe, the one we live in, and when you consider the radius, I think, is 13 billion light years, it turns out that that actually is right at the required radius and the proper density that we could actually be in a black hole. And so black holes may be very, very fundamental, and they may not be, and they are very, very important to physics, which is part of the reason they're so excited about trying to create these micro black holes over in Switzerland, which, by the way, for the audience, Switzerland is still there as of yesterday, anyway.
Okay, good. That's always good news. So what they're doing is they're not actually creating anti-gravity. Instead, they're using these micro black holes that they're creating to reduce the effect of gravity
to almost zero. Exactly. So it's not anti-gravity, and that explains the strange things that have been reported, where water has been lifted up underneath these UFOs, clouds have been sucked in. The reason that's happening is because these micro black holes that they're creating, before the micro black hole is created, something called these KK gravitons are created first. Then they induce the creation of a micro black hole. But the KK gravitons are creating a local gravitational field of relatively short range of 10 to the 16th of times the strength of ordinary gravity on Earth. That is why these UFOs, when they hover over land, often suck the tops of trees into a swirling mass, and they'll pull up dust and debris from the ground, or if they're over water, they'll lift up the surface of the water, 5 or 6 feet above its natural surface. And by the way, that represents tons and tons of water. So it gives an idea of how strong the gravity field is. And of course, as mentioned before, these KK gravitons are so strong, they're creating such a strong attractive gravity field in the process of creating micro black holes which swallow gravitons, Earth gravitons, that they actually bend light beams that are near a UFO. Any of the people listening tonight can, check on the web. They can look up stories where light beams have been bent. There's one that occurred, I think, in Australia, where a car was going down a highway and a UFO was over on the side just off the road, and his light beams actually bent toward the UFO.
Wow.
And so, but it's a relatively short-range field. I should mention that, because the KK gravitons, most of them will carry. I explain this in the book, so no need to take notes or anything. But a KK gravitons, most of them will have mass, and anytime a force particle has mass, normally a normal graviton from Earth has zero mass, no mass whatsoever, and because it has zero mass, it extends all the way across the universe. Its force can be felt anywhere in the universe, but when a force particle has mass, then its range is immediately shortened to a much shorter range. And so the field, the strong gravity field around these UFOs is localized and very close to the UFO itself.
Okay.
That's all it has to be. But it's certainly strong enough that they can bend light beams in the vicinity of the UFO, or they can pull water up and so on.
Now, let me ask you another question. These clowns in the UFOs with their giant gravity-inducing beams and everything, they're not going to suck all the gravitons that we need off the Earth, are they?
No, not at all. Nope. Because the Earth is constantly producing gravitons.
Okay.
They're actually producing what are called virtual gravitons, and these come from quantum mechanics, the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. And these virtual gravitons, even though when the UFO is hovering over a given area, it's going to suck all the gravitons in that local area up into the bulk. It's going to suck them up into the micro black holes, and then the gravitons, or the energy of the gravitons, is eventually dispersed in the bulk.
Okay.
But as soon as the UFO leaves that area, the gravitons continue on into infinity, just as before, and because they're constantly being created, the force is just constant. But anyway, that's. But if we could go, Bill, to slide 6B or 7, actually slide 7, but I called it 6B here.
Yeah, the 6B is the alternative for slide 6. Do we need to look at 6B at all? It says
we should, because actually this is more accurate what's going on. In the first slide there, I do that as kind of a 5,000-foot view of what's going on. But in this slide here, 6B, this is actually what physicists are actually looking at. Now, they're not interested in UFOs, but what's going on in here, a lot of this is what physicists are searching for right now. And if you could read this, Bill, that'd be great.
Yeah, it is. It's essentially the same thing as slide 6. The strong gravity field around the UFOs is created by the Kaluza-Klein gravitons that are predicted by M theory. These KK gravitons in turn create micro black holes. So the gravitons are the things that are creating the micro black holes. In our four-dimensional brain, pardon?
I'm sorry. It's actually the KK gravitons, the Kaluza-Klein gravitons, that we'll be creating. The energy will be so great that we'll be creating these KK gravitons, and they in turn they have such strong gravity, they end up creating micro black holes, and that's where the diversion of Earth gravitons takes place, and the energy of those gravitons ends up in the bulk. It literally leaves our membrane. Yeah, you can go ahead there, Bill.
Okay. On our four-dimensional brain, the MBH, which is the micro black hole, are expected to decay by emitting fermions, scalar particles, which are the Higgs boson particles, and gauge bosons.
And gauge bosons. Yeah, maybe I better explain that. Fermions are matter particles, like an electron. Scalar particles, there's no scalar particles that are known, but there's one that is theoretical, and that's called the Higgs boson. And a scalar particle just means it has zero spin, and spin. Oops, that's. You know what? I probably don't really need to get into that, but it has to do with quantum mechanics. And,
yeah, we don't want to go into quantum mechanics.
Yeah, we don't need that. That's in the book. I explain it in the book. But suffice to say that it's another. These are the kind of particles that are expected to, when a micro black hole decays, they are expected to form these type of particles. These are the decay products that'll be coming out of the black hole as it disintegrates. And then the gauge bosons are nothing more than the force particles, the carriers for the force particles. So exactly what we talked about before, the photons, the W plus, W minus of the weak nuclear force, and the gluons of the strong nuclear force.
So in other words, if these flying saucers are flying around, they're going flying around the sky and everything. And if we were to point a device that could measure these things, it would be able to detect these things as the micro black holes are decaying inside the UFO.
And precisely, and that's what I'm. If I sell enough books, and I can afford to buy the equipment, I will try to get out there and actually try to get this data myself. Hopefully there are, maybe there's people that are interested that, might be able to, I'm particularly looking for experts in, who are familiar with spectrographic equipment and not just the visible spectrum, but the invisible spectrum, which would include gamma rays and X-rays. But anyway, I'm kind of hoping other people would get interested and independently, or maybe with me or whatever, work on trying to get this kind of information, this data from UFO sightings. And you could do it in where UFOs, they often appear, for whatever reason, they'll appear, and there'll be like a UFO wave, like in Phoenix, Arizona, where the wave occurred for several months.
Right.
And when that happens, that's the ideal location to. Of course, it's hard to predict a wave, but if you start seeing them over a week or two, if you can get people down there with the proper equipment and gather this kind of data, then it would be possible to check the radiation signature and see if it resembles what we expect to see from decaying black holes, micro black holes.
Now, could it be with these waves of UFOs, and I might be going out on a limb here, could it be that first, I'll call it a mothership for the sake of the conversation, one with a much higher power ability to go through the bulk that we were talking about, goes through first, and then the other smaller, lower powered UFOs follow it through there, and that's why you have a wave of UFOs.
Oh, that's right. That's very likely, Bill, because very often they spot these these motherships, very often they'll see, like, for example, a cylinder, and then I know there was a sighting in France where they saw this cylinder, which was, I think they estimated, between 3/4 of a mile to a mile long, and probably 200 feet in diameter or something like that. I mean, this thing was humongous. And out of one end of it, it was seen in the night sky, but it was kind of lit up by its own illumination. And it was in France. And a guy was out walking his dog at about 2 a.m. in the morning, and he was stunned to see this thing. And then he saw a bright flash on one end of this thing, and a disc-shaped object came out, and it swirled around the cylinder a couple times, and then it shot off in one direction of the compass. And then a second typical disc-shaped UFO came out at the bottom of this thing, and again it swirled around, but it shot off in a different direction until about 6 or 7 of these things had come out, and they had shot off in all the directions of the compass.
I have actually seen one of those UFOs myself, folks.
Yes, I know, Bill, you mentioned that, and maybe you could share that story?
That was, this occurred in the late, mid-1970s, when I was still in high school and I was living at home. And I was in one of my astronomy phases, and I had a little telescope, and I saw what looked like Skylab up in orbit. I mean, it was rotating around, end over end over end, and I was looking at the thing through the telescope, and my neighbor, who was he and his wife, they drove a Volkswagen bus. You know, they were kind of the hippies from the 60s, and they did a lot of bird watching, so they had really good binoculars and whatnot. And he came over and said, "What are you looking at?" And you know, I told him, I said, "I'm looking at Skylab." And he goes, "Well, that's cool." So he goes and gets his binoculars, and we're watching this thing. And we watched it one night, and we watched it a second night, and we watched it a third night. And the third night, those little puffs that you were talking about, and you could see the little discs coming out. And we watched these things, him through his binoculars and myself through the telescope, and it was a little telescope, so you could hold it in your hand. It was more like a spyglass like you'd see in a pirate movie. And we watched these little things come down, and they did exactly what you were talking about. They went in the 4 directions of the compass. And the ones that, 2 of them came right over our head. And these things came, they look like, if you think of a pinball that you would see inside of a pinball machine, a chrome ball, that's what they look like. And they were totally silent, and I used his binoculars to watch one of them, and you could actually see the trail as they were punching through the clouds in the sky.
Yeah, that happened up at O'Hare International Airport in Chicago. They saw a UFO punch a hole in the cloud.
And this is where the story gets strange. As it turns out, his brother was active in the Air Force at a major Air Force base that I will not mention. And he said, "I'm going to call my brother and I'm going to find out what this is, because this is bizarre." I mean, neither one of us had ever seen anything like this. These things were dead silent, and they were so shiny you could actually see the lights from the ground reflecting on these things as they went by. And the next day, his wife came over and said, "Have you seen my husband?" I'm not going to mention his name either. Have you seen him? And I haven't. I didn't see him because I was in school all day. And the next, a couple of days later, I saw him again. And I said, "So did you call your brother?" And he goes, "What do you mean?" And I said, "About the stuff that we saw." He said, "I didn't see anything, and neither did you."
Huh.
So he was missing for a day, and when he came back, he didn't know anything about it. And I got the point, and I didn't talk about it for many, many years, but I figure it's been something like 30 years now, so I figure forget it. If they want to send their black helicopters after me, that's fine. Go ahead. I saw a flying saucer.
You know, it's possible. I think as Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who was the advisor to the Project Blue Book for the U.S. Air Force, it may be, the explanation may be a kind of relatively mundane. I think what was happening is the Air Force really didn't want to get involved with the UFO phenomenon anymore, and they basically were doing everything they could to kind of get it off their plate. They really didn't want anything further to do with it, and you can sort of understand why they felt that way. The objects have never really posed any serious threat to our national defense or anything, and so I kind of think what happened is the Air Force may have concluded that these things might be extraterrestrial. However, they also concluded that they weren't any threat, and that because there was so much skepticism among journalists about the UFO phenomenon, they didn't want the continued embarrassment of having to study this thing, and so basically what they did is they told people to cool it. You know, we don't want anything further to do with it.
Right.
So it's not really a conspiracy or anything. Rather, it's just maybe a better way to look at it is like this. Imagine that you're the president of a company, and somebody has like a psychic experience in the company that there's going to be, I don't know, a plane's going to crash into the company, the lower floor, or upper floor, or something, and the president says, he hears this and he says, "Oh, that's baloney," but then it occurs a day later, and so the president of the company knows perfectly well that this psychic phenomenon may actually be real. However, 99.999% of customers and people out there don't believe it. And so if he comes out and says, "Oh, I know, I have proof that it's real," he's going to undermine confidence in his company, because they're going to, see what I mean? And
Gotcha.
so in other words, even though the Air Force and the company president may know that a certain phenomena exists, they may shy away from it because they're thinking of the here and now, their current careers, and they've got to worry about that first. So I think that's what's going on. So in other words, it's not anything mysterious. It might be something you might call careerism. You're protecting your own career, and that's a legitimate concern. It's not illegitimate. But on the other hand, I believe, as I've said many times in when I've done talks on this UFO phenomenon, that I believe we can learn a lot. We can actually verify some of our own ideas on the direction of physics, whether they're going in the right direction or not, by actually looking at what these UFOs are doing, by gathering data like the spectrographic data that I talked about there. You know.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah. But maybe if we could read the rest of this. This is very important here, Bill.
This would be all graviton emissions from decaying black holes are expected to quickly disappear into the bulk, which is the space between the pieces of paper, and will be 5-dimensional gravitons. Therefore, once 4-dimensional gravitons are absorbed by the micro black holes, their energy is converted into 5-dimensional bulk gravitons, and the 4-dimensional gravitons disappear from our 4-dimensional brain.
Exactly.
Conservation of energy is preserved, but the effect of gravity is reduced to near zero for the UFO on our 4D brain. Graviton exchange between Earth and the UFO does not occur. Effectively, it is as if the 4-dimensional gravitons are kicked into the bulk.
Which is what I said in slide 6. But here I'm going into a bit more detail. And of course, the slide is just too small to explain everything. It's a little more complicated than I say here, but this is the basic idea. Actually, not 100% of the 4D gravitons are not 100% are converted to 5D bulk gravitons. Rather, some of the 4D gravitons from when they that are absorbed by the micro black hole are then converted to 4-dimensional photons, including gamma rays, and then whatever's left ends up going into the bulk in the form of 5-dimensional gravitons, what they call bulk gravitons.
So that's why these things get.
You know what? I'm afraid. You know, there's a bit of physics that goes behind this, which which we don't actually need, you know, for this slideshow. But this is the basic idea, and it's, by the way, I've been over the last since last week I've been doing a lot of reading about how they hope to detect the radiation from decaying black holes in the Large Hadron Collider. And what I'm finding is fascinating. It exactly backs up what I've been saying, that the gravitons will be ordinary gravitons with zero mass from planet Earth will be absorbed by the micro black holes, and then they'll end up being diverted into the bulk. Even in the Large Hadron Collider, they already know that that's where they're going to go, so everything looks like it matches what what I expect, what I believe that these UFOs are doing.
So that's why they both get brighter, and
that's right.
They also
yep.
People have died from the radiation burns from these UFOs, haven't they?
They sure have, and we can talk about that in just a minute, if that's okay,
yeah.
Bill. If we could cover the last 3 slides. I did do these last week, but these are crucial, and they really this will show you. This demonstrates that what I believe these UFOs are doing. I explain exactly why the evidence is pointing directly at these UFOs diverting gravitons into the bulk, into the 5-dimensional bulk.
Okay. Even though, folks, we are over the 1 hour time that we usually do on our Friday shows, I think this is interesting enough. We're going to go ahead and continue for a little bit longer here, because we've only got a couple of slides left to go. And this one is entitled Effects of UFOs in Close Encounters. There are 4 different items here. Evidence of strong magnetic fields, indications of strong attractive gravity fields.
And you may want to read what it says below it there. Yeah.
Okay. For the strong gravity fields, the strong magnetic fields, obviously, you're going to have spinning compasses and things like that. The indications of a strong gravity field are slowing down or stopping or slowing down of clocks, objects and masses of water being lifted toward the bottom surface of the UFOs, like what we're talking about, and light beams being bent toward the UFOs that we also talked about. And number 3 is certain types of radiation is detected near UFOs. And let's see, Paul Hill, a NASA scientist and early UFO investigator, noted evidence of gamma rays, X-rays, and higher frequency light emissions in the visible spectrum. And number 4 in this slide is observations of UFOs becoming partially or totally transparent.
And now, Bill, if we can go to the next slide to see what we expect to see with this the type of technology that I was talking about, that I talk about in the book.
Okay, the expected effects of proposed UFO technology. Micro black holes create strong magnetic fields, and this
exactly, and that's why pilots are reporting compasses spinning wildly.
Right. KK graviton. I don't mean right that you're correct, because obviously you wrote this, but Yeah, I mean it's like a no-brainer type of a
observation.
Observation, right? KK gravitons create strong attractive gravity field.
And and that's exactly what they noticed. Remember on the first slide, they noticed water lifting up and light beams being bent. And
number 3 on this slide is micro black holes will decay into Hawking radiation rapidly, including gamma rays and X-rays.
And that's what Dr. Paul Hill noticed back between the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. They had evidence. They actually had equipment that they were using that indicated that these UFOs were giving off gamma rays, exactly what's part of Hawking radiation. And so that's exciting because this is pointing directly at the idea that they are particle accelerators, and which is why they're circular, and that they're creating these micro black holes which decay into this type of radiation. My hope is that we can gather really good data to absolutely demonstrate Hawking radiation.
And number 4 on this slide, and this goes back to our 2 pieces of paper next to each other: the weak brain that we're on, and the stronger brain. What was the other one? The
gravity brain.
The gravity brain, the one that's holding all the grains of sand of gravity up against it. An object on our weak brain, or in other words, the piece of paper that we occupy, penetrating into the bulk, or the area between the 2 pieces of paper, will be seen to fade and disappear from our weak brain space-time.
Exactly, and that's exactly what people have reported. There was a very, very good story in which, in the next hour here, I could talk about a little bit, where a commercial airline pilot actually saw, and his crew saw, one of these UFOs. It looked perfectly solid, was picked up on radar, and then it disappeared. I'll discuss that one after the next slide here.
Okay.
And the last slide is the testing, if you want to take a look at that.
Yep, testing a proposed UFO technology. There are 3 items on this slide. Number 1 says, this approach depends on M theory and warped geometry, or some close variant, being correct. These theories are currently being tested at the Large Hadron Collider Particle Accelerator in Geneva, Switzerland, which we just learned they aren't answering their phones, so apparently they've disappeared into a black hole. Number 2 says, secondly, the UFOs are already giving us evidence of strong attractive gravity fields, mostly of short range, since most KK gravitons will have mass, but if possible, gather more data with instruments in close encounters. Not the movie, but the actual physical close encounters.
Yep.
And number 3 says, when UFO waves occur over a given region, attempt to get full spectrum data and location coordinates of the UFOs. The objective is to look for the unique spectral signature of Hawking radiation. This would be very convincing data.
And the reason I mentioned, location coordinates, because you want to be able to triangulate. You want at least 2 vehicles equipped with these spectrograph equipment, and that way you can triangulate and you can calculate the correct distance to the UFO from each vehicle. And in that, see, the 2 things you want is you want the frequency of the radiation, and you want the intensity. The frequency you'll get no matter how far away the object is, but the intensity you have to calculate based on the distance of the object from where the spectrographic equipment is, and the spectrometer they call it. And by the way, the spectrometer will pick up visible light, so we will also need a gamma ray detector, and then we need to make sure that the data is comparable between the visible spectrum and the gamma ray data, would have to kind of adjust the data to make it compatible. Compatible is the word I mean.
Now, how much does this stuff cost? You can't obviously you can't go down to Kmart and buy a spectral analysis camera.
A gamma ray detector. Well, one of my brothers actually, he lives up in New Hampshire, and he has to worry about radiation from the ground, from the rocks in the ground, so he bought a gamma ray detector, but it's only a handheld device,
right?
And it doesn't really calibrate the strength of the field, the number of gamma rays. It just tells you if they're there. But even that piece of equipment, very, very basic. I think my brother told me that it costs like $200. So I'm thinking really, really good equipment is probably going to be a lot more expensive. And then, in addition, we'd have to be able to get it out to the field. It would have to be something very portable, maybe where it could be mounted on a vehicle or something, maybe a pickup truck or something, and protected from the weather, of course. And it would have to have it would have to be able to measure the angle. It would have to, if you know what I mean. So in other words, the truck could be on a hill,
right?
And the thing could have a certain angle on it, pointing at the object, the UFO. Would have to take into account how much it's off from horizontal and that kind of thing. And I think so you can kind of see the technical problems involved. Hopefully there's somebody in the audience out there that could be interested in this sort of thing, or already has experience. In fact, actually, people who look at the stars and use spectrometers on stars,
right?
They may,
astronomers.
Yeah, they may actually have some. They would know something about this, and there are gamma ray astronomers who look at the invisible spectrum, the part that we can't see. But anyway, my hope is that I would really like to get out over the next 6 months. I'm praying that I either win the lottery or sell a lot of books, and either way, I could fund the equipment that's needed, and then try to get to one of these hot spots where the UFOs are appearing night after night, and try to gather this kind of data. The Phoenix Lights sightings that took place in 1997, they would have been ideal, because they continued to see them over, I think, at least 5 or 6 months. And so if I could have been hooked into a network of people that lived all over Arizona or in the Phoenix area, and they reported one in a particular area, hopefully we could rush our equipment into that location and try to get there in time to take advantage of gathering that data. And but that's the plan. But
no, go ahead.
Yeah, but I just have to come up with the funding.
Now, have you tried to contact MUFON?
You know what? I did, but the truth is that they barely have any money either, and funds. However, I haven't. One of them came. One of the guys, the head of the Massachusetts MUFON, came to one of my talks at a bookstore here in Massachusetts, and I probably will get in touch with him again, because they may actually know people that have the equipment that we need, and they might, maybe they could volunteer to help, and so that's definitely open. But maybe I'm appealing to the audience here too, if they know anybody, or if they are involved in, if they have spectrometers and might be interested in their region of the country, if they're or in other parts of the world too, for that matter, if they might be interested in volunteering to try to get this spectrographic data, that would be terrific. But I think that everybody can see that there's a fair amount involved here. There's some technical issues that I haven't figured out yet that would have to be dealt with first in order to make sure the data is good data. So anyway, that's kind of the objective here, and the hope that something we can do. So as you can see, when I wrote this book, of course I was interested in getting out and talking about the book, but I'm also my primary goal, my end goal here, is to gather this data to demonstrate that the technology that these UFOs are using is what I believe they're using, and how it's related directly to what's going on in physics on Earth.
So we're just essentially taking the baby steps that the UFO civilization, whoever is piloting these things, obviously discovered, well, probably an awful long time ago, probably hundreds of years ago. And I would imagine that this would also, if we could get mainstream physics involved in this, I would imagine this would also prove a lot of the physics theories that we have right now.
That's right, Bill. And actually, that's a very, very good observation. That's actually a very good one. See, now here's something that's very exciting. And I know this, our show here is fairly long, and a lot of people may need to be taking a break here and there. But this is very, very interesting. I mean, exciting, because see, the Hawking. I believe that these UFOs are going to be emitting what they call Hawking radiation, which is it looks like a black body curve.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like a normal curve. If anybody's taken statistics and they've seen a normal curve, it looks something like that. It's a little squashed on one side. But if the exciting thing is that establishment physics has never seen Hawking radiation. Almost 100% believe it's real, and believe eventually we'll detect it, and they hope to see it in the Large Hadron Collider. If we, those of us who are studying the UFO phenomenon, come in with good data, and with, say, multiple independent investigators coming in with similar data or identical data from different parts of the world or different parts of the U.S., if we bring that kind of data showing Hawking radiation to the physics establishment, that is going to get their attention, because nobody has ever seen it. And if we see it before the Large Hadron Collider sees it, that will be sensational, to say the least. And then at that point, that's when I believe the establishment physics community will really start to pay attention to the UFO phenomenon, because at that point they'll know that there's something there. Because there's no way we could have come up with data showing Hawking radiation, unless, that would be virtually impossible for us to, come up with that data on our own. I mean, presumably it could be fabricated, but if we have the correct equipment that shows that that actually has printouts or computer data that shows what we actually detected, then that would be difficult for the establishment physics community to ignore. They couldn't ignore it, and so that's the goal here. So I hope everyone sees how important this part of the investigation is. This is like the keystone that'll and if it is demonstrated that it is Hawking radiation, it's absolutely clear at that point that these UFOs are creating micro black holes, and that's how they're eliminating the effect of gravity. And of course, if the establishment physics community starts investigating it, I can virtually guarantee the U.S. government will really want to pay attention to this too. And so it could be, we could very well be on the threshold of developing this technology that the UFOs are using.
Wow. Now, I have one last question for the show tonight. And that is this. They're creating their micro black holes and everything else, and they're counteracting the effects of gravity, because gravity is essentially weak. How much?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Bill. They're reducing the effect of gravity. They're not. They're actually. It's not anti-gravity. They're just eliminating the effect of gravity.
Okay. Now, what would they possibly use for a power source inside of these UFOs?
That's a very good question, and I talk about that in the book too. Well, I think I know what they might be using. For years they've been trying to create fusion energy.
Right.
And they've been using electromagnetic fields and a plasma. And what they try to do, they use a plasma is charged, and they use an electromagnetic field to compress the plasma. But the problem is that when they do so, the reaction, the fusion reaction, almost immediately is way too strong for the electromagnetic, the relatively weak magnetic fields that we can create, is way too strong for the electromagnetic fields that we create to contain. We just can't contain them. And so although we actually have, I think, created small bursts of fusion, they only last for microseconds, and then the thing breaks up and they have to start over again. Now, of course, they've been working on this problem for years, and they're hoping they can solve it. But the thought occurred to me that if we're able to create intensely strong localized gravity fields, then we might be able to use these gravity fields, which would be 10 to the 16th times stronger than ordinary gravity. This would be exactly like the center of our sun, where fusion is taking place. And so we might be able to actually use gravity fields rather than electromagnetic fields to contain the plasma, and then we can fuse the atoms together. So we could fuse 2 hydrogen atoms together and make helium and things like that. And then in the process, we'll create energy, and that may be what the UFOs are using. They've just figured out how to, even though we've been struggling to create fusion power, they've probably figured it out by using gravity fields rather than electromagnetic, tremendously strong gravity fields, which we are just on the threshold of creating ourselves.
That is, that's extremely interesting. I really appreciate you coming on the show. I've had a heck of a great time talking to you tonight, because this is,
I've enjoyed this too, Bill. It's the first show. I think we had to go through the basic physics and stuff, so that was kind of a lot of slides, But tonight we really got into the meat of it, and I think that I really enjoyed this,
Yeah, I think this is very, very interesting, and I think what we're going to do, we're going to do a little bit of housekeeping here on the air, folks, so everybody can hear it. I think what we're going to do is probably break up this show, because we're approaching an hour and 45 minutes now. I think what we're going to do is maybe break this show up into maybe 3 or 4 parts, possibly 20 minutes long each. And that way, what you can do is you can direct people to our YouTube channel, and I'll send you an email with the website address on it, so that as you go along and you try to get more interest in this, if we've explained this well enough for you to be able to send the links out to various people in the physics field, people that might actually have this type of equipment that they could loan you and use to do this detection work, we can hopefully we can help you out by getting more people interested in this.
That would be fantastic, because it's by myself I might be able to do it, but it's going to take some time and hopefully winning the lottery. But the more people that get involved, the better the chance that we can get this data and then move forward, attempting to prove that this is the technology that UFOs are using. And I think just from everything I've read about UFOs, and it seems very, very likely that this is what they are using. And the interesting thing is that it shouldn't be too surprising to people that the direction physics is going on Earth just happens to be. It looks like it happens to be exactly what these other alien civilizations have done themselves, and they're taking advantage of the same physics that we're currently developing. And that makes, to my mind anyway, that makes perfect sense that the physics community on any planet anywhere in the universe would come to exactly the same conclusions that we are now coming to. And then if we can confirm this by getting good data from UFO sightings, we will definitely be on our way to developing this technology.
Okay. Now, would it be okay with you if at our website, where this will also be posted, would it be okay with you if we put your email address on there too, if somebody wants to contact you?
Sure. That would be fine. Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. And it'll be the same email address that we have for the show here, right?
That's right. B. Schroeder, and yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We will do that, and before I upload this to YouTube, I'll put your email. I'll overlay your email address on this too.
Okay. Excellent.
Yeah. So it'll be up on there, so as people listen to it, and hopefully we can attract some
interest and
some good attention for you, anyways. Because I think I think you might actually be onto something here.
Hey, or Bill, would it make more sense for them to contact your show and then you contact me? That might be or would that make more sense? Maybe you could act as a clearinghouse.
We could possibly do that, because we do get significant amount of traffic on the YouTube page. And I know you don't have high-speed internet yet, so that might
exactly. And I'm kind of and I'm sort of thinking that might be a better way to do it. I was just thinking, have my email. You operate a show there, but having my email all over the place. I'm thinking maybe
you've never had high-speed internet yet, so you don't know how that works.
Exactly. Yeah, I could be a bit overwhelmed.
You could very easily get overwhelmed.
Yeah, although I don't want to discourage people from contacting you, and then you could then contact me, because this is I think is very important, and so whatever people, people out there that are perhaps engineers, astronomers, and if they have the kind of equipment that could be useful for this purpose, it would be a tremendous help, and if they want to get involved and somehow we could figure this out,
Okay. Now I have. We're going to end the show here in just a minute. However, one of my producers down there in Mexico, she has been observing a, we're going to call it a UFO for the lack of a better term.
Excellent.
It appears to be some type of almost plasma discharge.
Yes.
From the images that I've seen. I would like to send you those images to see if there's any possible way that you might be able to identify these things, or may know somebody that can identify these, because we've tried to get some attention focused on this, because this thing has been going on down there for months.
Well, you know, Mexico has been a hot spot for UFOs for off and on over the years, many times. Jaime, what's his name? That guy, Jaime. I forget his name. He's a journalist down there. Has been involved in studying the UFOs that have been seen over Mexico.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe somebody there knows his name, or your Mexican contact might know. His first name is Jaime. I think it's pronounced Jaime.
Okay.
And does she know? Starts with an M, his last name, I think.
I'm waiting for her response in the production chat. Maybe she does, maybe she doesn't. We're going to be having possibly a radio show host from down in Mexico on tomorrow night that's going to be talking about some very strange things that have been going on down there.
Oh,
so
you know what, Bill, I wish I could listen in on that. I'm going to be traveling tomorrow, and I'm afraid I won't be able to. But it'll end up being on your site, though?
Oh, yeah. It'll be on the YouTube site, and it'll also be an MP3, because there have been some very disturbing things that have been happening in the past few weeks. There have been people that, what we call in the business, going rogue over this particular topic and releasing data that they shouldn't be releasing. And it's actually endangering people's lives at this point, and it's got us upset to the point where we're going to have the originator of the story on, and he is quite upset, and everybody on the show staff is quite upset about this, because none of this was supposed to be released, and it's going to be a heck of a show tomorrow night. I better keep my finger on the bleeping button.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Oh, my.
Yeah, the fellow's name is Alex Bachman, I believe. And he hosts a radio show down there in Baja, Mexico. And he's got some excellent information. It may actually be related to to the UFO phenomenon, but we're not sure at this point. We won't know until we get him on the air. It's going to be a heck of a show tomorrow night. But it will be available as an MP3, so you will be able to download it.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Of course, I'll have to wait till I get to high speed. we are eventually going to get high speed at our house.
Yeah.
And
I think you might actually be the last person in North America to get high-speed internet.
Bill, I think you're right.
If I'm not mistaken.
And now if I can only persuade my wife to trade in our horse and buggy for a car.
You know, they have four wheels on those cars now. Did you know that? And they have a roof on them.
Yeah. Oh boy. And,
boy, are you going to be in so much trouble when she hears this?
Yeah.
Fortunately, it's right at the end of the show, so she might not get that far.
Good. And we'll have to keep her away. Yeah.
All right, Bob, listen, I appreciate you coming on the show, and hopefully we can get you some more attention for your project and figuring out what exactly these UFOs are using for propulsion and how they fly. And again, I personally think you're onto something here. And
you know, I'm really excited about this, and I do think that we probably, one way or another, we're going to get this data, and when we do, I think it will reveal that these craft are actually using stuff that we ourselves are developing on Earth, and so I think that's going to be very, very exciting if we're able to gather this data and demonstrate that that's what they're doing. And Bill, I want to say thank you for having me on the show. This has been a pleasure.
Not a problem. When I got your original email from I forget the name of the email list that we use for getting some of our show guests. When I originally got that, that email, I said, "Oh, I got to get this guy on.
Oh, no kidding. Oh,
This
I'm glad to
this is
hear
going to
that.
be interesting." The slideshow last week was a little bit heavy for a lot of people to slog through.
You know, I thought about that too. I sometimes when I do that in the bookstores, you know, I realize my wife told me she sits in the back and she said, you know, maybe we could shorten it up a bit. And so that's part of the reason I came up with this shorter slideshow that we did tonight. I kind of think this one's better because it kind of gets to the you know, the concept a bit quicker, and this way people, you know, they don't start getting hungry in the middle of the show.
They don't start falling asleep, is what you're trying to say, right?
Yeah, right. Or run off to get a hamburger.
They're like going, huh? What's this guy talking about?
Yeah, and but should we ever get to talk to some, you know, professional physicists and stuff, I'd bring a longer slideshow because they would be interested in that, and well, actually, most people would be, but you know, probably maybe in stages, you know, maybe an hour here and an hour there.
Yeah, in bits and pieces. And I think what I'm going to do with last week's show is break that up into two episodes, and then do the same thing with this one, and that way. Well, there'll be 4 videos up on YouTube instead of just 1 or 2, and we'll do the same thing with the MP3s, and I'll send you the link for the MP3s and everything, so you can send them around to various people, and they can download them and whatnot, and put them on their iPods and play them in their cars and everything.
And check it out. Oh,
yeah,
that'd be great. Yeah.
So, anyways, Bob, I appreciate you coming on the show. I will be in touch over the next couple of days with that information for you. Okay.
That sounds fantastic, and again, thank you for having me.
Yep, not a problem. I enjoyed it. So,
oh, me too.
Okay, I'll talk to you in a couple of days. Okay.
Fantastic. Talk to you then.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, was our guest, Bob Schroeder, and he has, and I think this guy's onto something here. I think he may actually have a pretty darn good clue as to how these UFOs work, because it's not a conspiracy, because people all over the world see these things. I've seen them. One of our producers sees one in Mexico almost every night, and we know they exist, and obviously the government knows they exist. They just don't think that the UFOs are actually a threat against the United States, so, you know, why bother? But I think he actually may have figured out how these bloody things work. So this will be up on YouTube over the next day or so. We're going to break it up into smaller bite-sized segments so that people don't fall asleep while they're listening to the resuscitation of all of the physics theories and everything. And we are now going off the air, and it has been excellent having all of you watching the show. And tomorrow night we're going to have Boris Artemenko and Alex Bachman on, and it is going to be a rousing festival of bleeping once we really get going. So we'll see everybody tomorrow night. Thank you for stopping by.